failure is actually my greatest superpower, simply because I don't care about it anymore. It's like failure. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course I'm going to fail 9 times out of 10. That's how life is.
Welcome to Slideshow. My name is Dave Hayward. I'm the founder of Europa Creative Partners, and I'm very excited about this week's guest. Dante, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, basically, I'm a nuisance on LinkedIn and a perpetual business traveler, and someone who works in digital skills training. But I'm a serial entrepreneur who's tried everything, failed at almost everything, succeeded at one or two things, and lived to tell the tale, I suppose.
You also own some cafes, I read somewhere as well. Is that right?
Oh man, I got
Yeah,
six
you've got
cafes now. Six
right.
cafes, three menswear stores, three barbershops, and three training businesses as well.
Let's go back to the beginning. Where did you grow up? How did this all start?
Well, it's quite funny that I'm actually in Sydney at the moment, because that's where I grew up. I grew up here in Sydney in the infamous Sutherland Shire, where in about, I think it was 2001, there was some race riots going on there, which for anyone who lived there and grew up there knows hardly a surprise that happened in the Shire.
Right.
Probably the whitest area of Sydney, and very much at the time, it was like a part of Sydney and Australia that hadn't existed since the 1950s, but did exist in the 1990s. And you think of like the classic movies like The Castle, or any of those, Muriel's Wedding, any of those quintessential Australian movies with the overblown accents and the overblown stereotypes of what it is to be Australian. And that's what it felt like there. It was very much that kind of place to grow up. So I grew up in a bit of a very white bubble, and
Sort of
when I got
monocultural sort of thing.
very, 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 very much in a high school of over 2,000 students, there was one Chinese student, one Greek student. Everyone else is Anglo. So that gives you an
Wow.
idea of the kind of environment it was.
Wow. But you're now living in the Northern Territory. That's theoretically your home base, although you seem to travel all over Aussie, basically. So yeah, how did you end up in NT?
Well, that was the start of my, what I will call the radio era. So I was involved
Right.
in commercial radio for a time. And my first commercial radio gig was in Darwin. And that was with the Hot 100 FM. I went there as a radio ads copywriter, and
Oh
then
yeah.
was sort of taken on to do fill-in shifts on the radio. And within a year of getting there, I was on the breakfast show, and did that for a good 3 years before circumstances changed, and that story of my life is always going somewhere else, always heading somewhere else. And yeah, but that's how I got to Darwin. I've also been there and back many times. Like, I call this my fourth tour of duty. My fourth time
Right.
living there is currently. And I keep ending up back there, I think, these days, because 20 years later, I appreciate the lack of crowds, the lack of traffic. I have zero tolerance for traffic, which is why I'm staying in my hotel room as much as possible in
Yeah.
Sydney, and only
Yeah.
leaving to do the things I have to.
You'd hate it in Auckland. Auckland is we've really messed up we're not great at long-term infrastructure, basically, put it that way.
Right.
So as a result, everyone's in their cars. It's a nightmare. Although we've got our tube system called the CRL starting on the 13th of September. So everyone's very excited about that. And I think it'll be really good for the city. It's funny you mentioned radio. I had a radio show in London, actually, called Dave's Peckham Dream. It was in Peckham. And it was community radio, and it was super interesting. But we used to have these guests who just come along because it was community radio. There was this one dude, and he wanted to read a poem. We were like, never had anyone read a poem on it, but I made the mistake. The mistake I made was I did not ask to see the poem before before he read it. And he started reading it. It's like super misogynistic. And he finished, and I just didn't know what to say. So I said to him, maybe you should have a listen to this next track. And I played him Chairman of the Board, Love and Understanding. And that was great radio, basically. That's what you want. Yeah.
I think we all have a community radio story when we've gone into radio at some time. My own community radio story, it launched my career, but it was
Right.
probably not the most ethical way. I sort of, at the time, went into a Christian community radio station because, to
Yep.
be honest, they are the most organized, best formatted, best training, just the best equipped radio stations in the community radio segment. And they forgot to ask if I was Christian or not. I forgot to tell them that I was gay. And when it came out about 2 years later that I was promptly removed from their breakfast show. And that's how I ended up in Darwin, was basically because I needed the job real fast, and the next job was
Right.
in Darwin.
Wow. And so the next job was still in radio in Darwin. That's how you sort
Yeah,
of
yeah.
headed up there. Yeah.
Yeah,
And now,
exactly.
and at some point you must have realized that you really good at lots of different things, because you've got, if you take novelty seeking to its extreme, there you are, right? So you've got all these different things. What was your first business? Where did you start with?
Oh, before my first business, I probably should go. My first career was actually in medicine.
Right.
I studied
Right.
medicine and
Yeah.
only practiced for 3 years after I graduated because I hated it. Basically, I was working in psychiatric medicine, and the problem with that was that all I was doing is prescribing drugs that I didn't even have to dispense or didn't even have to administer, because we had nurses to do all that. So all I
Yeah.
was doing is basically tranquilizing people. And I thought to myself, I can't do this for the next 50 years of my life.
Yeah.
This is not
Yeah.
changing the world, helping the world. This is not even helping the people here. So can I do this for the next 50 years? And the answer was no. But
Hmm.
apparently the next step, rather than being well thought out, which would have been go into a different area of medicine, my next step was burn it all down and go and become a bartender on Oxford
Yeah.
Street in Sydney in the 1990s, late 90s. And I thought
Nice.
that was a solution, which was fun. It was great fun. But wow, it was definitely not the wisest decision I've ever made.
Yeah, yeah. I think it sounds like you went from one extreme to the other. One which was just so orderly that you're like bored out of your tree, and the other which is so chaotic that yeah, things aren't great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And what are you? How did you end up with all these different businesses? That's something that, and
Oh, wow. So probably the first stab at business, real business, and I'm not counting my attempt to sell apple pies from the school tuck shop out of my
yeah,
school locker at recess time when I was 15 years old. We won't count that one. What we will count is from 2008 onwards, when I was doing a bit of freelance writing on the side for a couple of magazines. Something that a friend of mine just said, "Hey, do you know anyone who knows how to write?" And I just went, "I can write." Didn't know how to write, but I thought I'd give it a stab anyway. Did it very well, got paid for it. And so the business was really just as a freelance writer that then became a freelance recorder of radio commercials using my own voice, became video production, became building websites, became until finally, probably around 2017, when I really then switched it over to the full-time gig rather than working on the side all the time. So lots of side gigs, lots of like wherever the money would come from. Yeah, sure, I'll say yes. And a lot of it
yeah,
involved technology, simply because I was exposed to technology very young on Commodore 64s and programming games in BASIC, and
yeah.
using GEOS as one of the world's first, GUI operating systems. And just that sort of that background just led me towards a lifelong, I guess, love affair with technology.
Yeah, I had a BBC computer, one of the really early ones, and that was basic and built games. Normally choose your own adventure games and
Hmm.
basic, that was the kind of what the best output of that type of technology. And
Yeah.
so you started out with all these different things, and then how did you, I'm trying to work backwards from the barbershop, cafes, all that. How did you start getting into those? Because of those, the one that I think sounds like the most hard work is the cafes. I don't know anyone in hospitality who's not working their ass off, right? It's insane. And the
Oh,
money
the
is not
beautiful thing
huge.
about oh, well, the
Yeah.
beautiful thing about cafes is I own them. I don't have to work in them. That's
Right,
the best
right.
part
You
of it.
just
I would not know how to operate an espresso machine. I have no idea what to do with that. And
yeah,
there's a part of me that also says, well, I don't want to know. At the same
yeah,
time, I don't need to. That's what I've
yeah.
got managers and baristas and kitchen staff for. So how that all occurred basically was world was starting to shut down early 2020. So we're talking about April. So it's about April 10, I think, in 2020, when I saw a Facebook post go up in a community group on Facebook that I didn't even know I was part of. At some point,
Right.
I'd been added to some group. It was in Cairns in North Queensland. And with that post was a family who basically were trying to sell their cafe to get out of the country very quickly. They were Brazilian, need to get out of the country really quickly to go and help family in Brazil. At that time, at the very beginning of the pandemic, Italy and New York City and Brazil had phenomenally high rates of death from COVID. It was horrible.
Yeah.
And so they were trying to get home, but they needed to offload this cafe. They didn't have anyone to just sort of manage it for them. And they just go, we're just getting out, we're going. But no one was going to buy a cafe. as the world looked like it was closing down. We still hadn't closed down yet in Australia, so we're still relatively open. But then, a week later, you could see the posts in that community group were getting a little bit more desperate. And at some point, a friend of mine said, "Hey, you ever really, are you seeing this post that keeps coming up?" And a friend of mine in Cairns went, "Yeah, I feel like there's a story behind it." So look, I basically reached out to them and said, "Look, what's the story here? What's going on?" They explained the situation with family back in Brazil and how quickly. And now they're at the point where they're saying, "We think things are going to close down here. We won't be able to get out of the country. So we need to
Yeah.
do this in the next week so we can get
Yeah.
out." And I said, "Well, basically, what will it take for you to be able to do that?" And they said, "Basically, you pay for our airfares for ourselves and our child, and you've got a cafe." Now, you imagine airfares when the world's closing down, not
Yeah,
cheap. It
not
was about
cheap.
about $18,000. But I picked up a cafe with 8 staff in an industrial area of Cairns for $18,000.
Wow.
That then became a challenge because the world did close down a couple of weeks later. And so we couldn't serve people in the dining room. We weren't considered an essential service. So we didn't know how to operate with that. So I just went, "Well, I can't get to Cairns. My guy's on the ground. Can you please go and drive around and just spot something in there, like spot an idea?" And so they said, "Well, we heard that the guys at the local council, excuse me, and in the local government buildings, they have to work. They can't not go to work, but they also can't leave the building to go to cafes and all that. So yeah, maybe there's a chance we can put something in there." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Do we have a portable machine?" They went, "Well, no, but we can find one." They found a portable coffee machine, a coffee cart, and it wasn't very much to buy because people are trying to offload things like that very quickly to make money. So we managed to pick up a coffee cart and got permission to use that in one of the local regional council facilities. And we'd plant a person in there all day who'd be appropriately, vetted to be safe to be in there, would follow whatever their protocols were at the time, which is basically wash your hands and wear a mask. And that worked. And then they were asking this local government council, then asking, "Well, can you do more of these?" And then some of the Queensland state government offices in the same city say, "Actually, can you do this for us?" So I very quickly had to scramble to get some asset finance to buy $125,000 worth of coffee carts, which the finance companies all collectively agreed was a stupid thing to do, until I showed them
Right.
the memoranda of understanding I had from these governments. And they're like, "Holy crap, you could make a fortune on this." And I know, give me money.
Yeah, yeah. Give me money. Let me
Got the
set me up,
money.
bro.
Yeah, 5 coffee carts later, and that is basically what funded the next cafe and the next cafe, and then eventually making enough out of those cafes, which usually are quite low margin businesses. But
Yeah, that's
I've
right.
got a process I use to make them quite high margin, and that's now bought all the other businesses on top of that.
Damn. It's interesting you mentioned process, because I'm always mega curious about people who are good at process, because I'm rubbish at it. Anything to do, once I go, I'm really good kind of classic strategist, and then I'm really good at 2/3 of it. And then when it gets to the final third, I completely lose interest, right? I haven't got any capacity to do that stuff, the final details. So how do you manage it? Is that something that's consistent with your experience?
Well, the beautiful thing with those businesses, is particular cafes, the retail, all that stuff, is that I'm designing processes that I don't have to follow. That's for other
Right.
people. So
Yeah, yeah,
therefore, the end part of it where I have to follow the process, that's not my
yeah.
job. That is
Right.
something I give to my group manager. And my group manager is excellent at execution. So I'm
Right.
terrible at execution, really good at
Yeah.
strategy, very good at planning everything out and thinking of all the
Yeah.
outcomes. But he
Yeah.
is amazing at getting people to do those things, as long as I am involving him in the process. And that's something I learned very quickly, that he was a very, very easy person to trust, because basically what would I know about cafes when he's been working in them all his life? So get the guy in who knows how to do it, and go, "Well, basically, what are the things that you couldn't do under the last owners that you wish you could have done to make this thing work better?" And you're like, "Oh, let me count the ways." And so with that, we just designed a process, which in some ways is remarkably similar to the experience I had when I was at uni, working at McDonald's and then Sizzler
Yeah.
restaurants when they were around as
Yeah.
well. Everything
Yeah.
was very process driven. There's a very specific way to do everything to keep consistency and efficiency and cost control. And so we laid that over the first cafe, and then the second, the third, through to the sixth. They're all running on the same system back of house. But the uniqueness we've got there is that rather than having like the same sign on the front door, which my previous management consultants wanted to corporatize and put up signs and make it the same brand across the group. And I'm like, that's the last thing we want to do in front of house. It looks like a completely localized cafe that's localized to that environment. It's
Yeah.
named the legacy name. It's always been named. We're not changing a thing out front, but about at the back, it's now a lean, mean hospitality machine, and it runs like clockwork.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Sounds really great. I worked at McDonald's in the 90s too, and it is amazing. They can take anyone off
Oh,
the street, basically plug you in. And I remember I used to do the graveyard shift on the Saturday night, and the worst thing that possibly happened to me was I was made employee of the month, and so I had to serve all these drunk people who were like, "Hey, here he is!" Oh my God, it's so humiliating. Yeah. And so that's that, and that led to barbershops.
mm.
And how did that, what was the sort of driving, was that another thing where it was caprice, or was it something that you thought
It
strategically and kind of
was
went for?
actually a little bit of caprice. So
Yeah.
basically got to the point where my accountants were then saying, "You're making too much money. Your tax burden is very, very high right now. We need to
Right.
get that reduced. So we're suggesting you buy some more businesses." Like,
Right.
oh, this is getting out of control. I've already got 3 cafes at this point. Do I
Yeah.
want more? And so
Yeah.
what we did is I set them a task and said, "Well, you find me what you think is a good idea." About
Yeah.
3 months later, they came back to me and said, "Hey, a family that's in country New South Wales that's got a menswear store chain, 5 stores. And what they're looking for is a controlling investor to come in, basically like private equity, to buy into it at 51% and eventually buy them out completely. But they need about a 4 to 5 year window where they can sort of still earn money and then
Yeah.
retire. The kids are
Wow.
not interested in the business, all that. So I'm like, okay, interesting. What do they do? Oh, it's menswear. Okay, wow. Okay, not a great retail. Menswear, any sort of clothing retail is absolutely annihilated right now. It's just terrible. And as part of a buying group, so these stores are bloated with product they can't sell, things that have been sitting in the back room for like 15 years unsold, boots and hats and all sorts of things. Crazy, like no processes, no nothing. Family business just grew
Yeah.
organically over
Yeah.
35 years. And then the idea was that what they're doing is these particular menswear stores were located in what were old country co-op stores, so general stores, way too big for a menswear store. So that was kind of ridiculous. It's like you walk in and it's like all the racks are so far apart from each other just to fill up space. So it was kind of a joke. They were like very makeshift. And so coming in there, the first opportunity I saw was, can't we just use up some of this space for other stuff? And so that took a lot of researching with council. At the time, this family has the freehold on these stores, so we can do whatever we like with them. We can subdivide into, not completely subdivide the separate addresses, but at least split up the stores into petitioned areas. And that's where I got the idea to basically go, well, if I can go look for some finance that's going to pay for me to split these 3 bigger stores into 3 things each. So menswear in the middle, cafe on the left, barbershop on the right. How would that work? So there's just involved a lot of phone calls, a lot of meetings with people in council, a lot of meetings with builders. So basically, then a bank, an investment, well, not an investment bank, but a business bank sort of came on board
Yeah,
and
of
said,
course.
"We like this idea. We want to fund that." And so they gave me a chunk of money to say, "Go do that." The first one we did, as we were about to start doing that and it was starting to empty out the store, the town was flooded. So
Right.
we didn't have to pay for that first reno. Basically the insurance
Wow.
payout from the floods paid for that first reno. You wouldn't
Nice.
believe it, but like in the second one, the same thing happened. So in mid north
No.
New South Wales, yeah, mid north New South Wales. I won't name the town because it still holds some. My advantage story is many other people's disadvantage story in that town,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
Understood. Yeah.
they also had floods that were very damaging, and basically we had the same happen with the second one. So by the time we got the second one, we hadn't spent any of the money the bank gave us because we'd been able to do the complete free fit out with the money we got from insurance. So what we did essentially with those 2 stores is tripled the valuation of those locations just by splitting large stores into 3 smaller stores. And then the arrangement is basically that the family doesn't have any equity or ownership into the cafe or the barbershop. That's all me.
Yep.
but they still have 49% of the menswear part of it and of the freehold. So that means then they've still got that. So they've become obviously very excited in the business again. They see a lot of opportunity, and the kids have now got more excited because they're seeing activity and lots of growth. And so trying to sort of temper the expectations and say, well, the growth isn't really in this bit. I'm guessing they're now sort of second guessing and going, well, maybe we don't want to sell the buildings off now. We want to keep those because that's a good rent seeking opportunity for our future. I'm like, yeah, but either way works for me.
Yeah. Sounds
Yeah.
good. Yeah, and what? Because they must be getting at least a halo effect from all the activity on either side, right?
Which
The
was the
cafe.
absolute
Yeah.
thing, creating a hub,
Yeah.
basically creating a
Yeah.
destination out of a store that was
Yeah.
pretty much ignored.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my God. I've just had eye surgery and I was in a dark room for about 3 weeks. I got COVID just after I started recovering as well. So it's like lockdown vibes, right? It was very much. And I started spiraling a bit, I have to admit. I was just really stuck in a dark room, was worried about work, of course, couldn't look at screens and just felt pretty rubbish. So I started listening to different podcasts, and one of them was Mark Manson, who wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And I'd always avoided that book because I'm not a big fan of self-help kind of books, but it turns out that he's like the antithesis of that, right? And
Very
anyway, one of the things that he said that kind of really reminds me of you a bit is that he was talking about confidence and how self-esteem, the idea that confidence is linked to self-esteem is actually a relatively new concept. It's only been around since the 1930s. And what he was saying is that the actual thing that people for when they perceive confidence is actually someone who's tolerant of risk and failure and uncertainty. And it seems to me that you have a high tolerance for kind of, I guess, risk is probably calculated risk is probably a better way of describing it. But there's a lot of
mm.
uncertainty there. How do you deal with that kind of uncertainty, particularly like starting a cafe in the middle of a pandemic and all that kind of stuff? Do you ever get stressed about it, or is it this something that you just work through? You think,
I get stressed by cash flow dips. So when I'm just
yeah,
seeing that there's not the usual amount of money coming in to be able to support all these people, I get stressed about the fact that I've now got 72 people whose livelihoods and mortgages and rent payments all depend upon my ability to pay them. That is a
yep,
stress, but not
yeah,
as big a stress as I guess as I thought it would initially be. I thought that would be
yeah,
crippling stress. The whole idea of my ADHD brain looking for catastrophizing every potential outcome, thought that would be worse. It hasn't been. And that's the story of my life, is that I've gone through enough failures to know that you don't die. So
yeah,
first failure
yeah,
being, being a national level runner, falling over at the national championships, the embarrassment of that, being the favourites by so far to win that gold medal, and then going to the Commonwealth Games and all that sort of thing. That failure, I didn't die. I
yeah,
a year later kind of forgot that I was ever a runner. So life has this way of making you move on and go, actually, you know what? That failure, that thing that was so massive and so important to you at the time, a year later didn't even matter. In university, the whole idea of failing an exam, you do it again. Oh, okay. So while you have that failure, the failure isn't a failure of life. You can move on. The failure of the first business in 2010, where I actually went bankrupt because, I did not know what I was doing to manage a business or manage finances or manage anything. I didn't die. I couldn't get
yeah,
credit for quite a while.
right,
So that was fine. I didn't die. So that's that continual process of being willing to fail enough times to understand that it isn't the end of the world when you fail. And then you're going, okay, so if I take these massive risks and I put everything that I've got into that, the failure is potentially hard and big and real and not life ending, but certainly life altering. Or
yep,
you take lots of little risks along the way, and if one of those fails, that's okay. So the example would be, Dave, that like this year I've started, we're up to August, so I've started 8 new businesses this year. I start a new
yeah,
business every month. I try something. It usually fails within 2 to 3 weeks. Nothing lost. Great, move on,
yeah,
next thing. And then eventually what will happen, like happened in October last year, one of those things worked and is now a completely different business and a line of business in itself, making good revenue for very little input, because I'm just willing to take the ego hit of failing and also failing publicly, because these are things which I release publicly and
Yes.
then up
Yeah.
to a month later have to shut down and admit, oh, that didn't work. And now it's
Yeah.
literally a case of, oh, that didn't work. Okay, move on. That's how it
Yeah.
is now. It's not attached to my identity. Failure is actually my greatest superpower, simply because I don't care about it anymore. It's like failure. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course I'm going to fail 9 times out of 10. That's how life is.
It's interesting because I think it also comes down to kind of ego, right? You ultimately there are so many different things that can construct a failure that are outside your control. I think
Mm.
humans, we fundamentally misunderstand where our agency begins and ends, and that is where
Yeah.
that's where failure really hurts, because you've put yourself into the failure. Yeah, I don't know. I've always had a bit of a thing about it. But I don't know why, because I've had plenty of failures. It's like I've had enough to know exactly what you said. It's not the end of the world. It is just, I remember I used to be in events, and we did a massive
Mm.
corporate party. But I don't know about in Aussie, but in New Zealand, there was this culture of really extravagant Christmas parties, massive piss-ups for corporates. It's kind of gone
Yeah.
now. It's a bit of a shame, really. But we did this one, and the creative was amazing. I can't tell you how great the whole thing was, but we screwed up the drink queues. And you can basically screw up lots of things in an event, but that is the one thing you can't. There were
Yeah.
queues out the door. I mean, it was just a nightmare. The CEO was looking for me. I was hiding. I was like, and I went to bed that night just like, this is the end of my career, basically. And yeah, it was a rough few weeks, but it was all good. In the end, we lost the contract, but yeah, it was just a thing, and ultimately no one died. We're not doing life and death stuff. We're just organizing a big corporate party.
Exactly what you're talking about there reminds me very much of the approach I've taken to diversification. Because, like you said,
Yeah.
you lost the contract, but that
Yeah.
was at the destruction of your business? Probably not,
No.
because you had other
No.
contracts, right? There's
Yeah. Yeah.
diversity
Totally.
across many different clients, and that's kind
Yeah.
of what I'm doing. Is that
Yeah.
I've got a rule in my life that no one activity I'm doing can take more than 20% of my total income. Like,
Yeah.
if that drops off, I lose 20%. I can turn up one of the other fire hoses to fill the gap, or take on
Yeah.
more work in another area to do that, or get a bit more out of that cafe to make up for the fact that one of the others is dipping right now. That's the idea, is to be able to have those connections of fire hoses. You turn that one up, turn that one down, turn them up, which suits my ADHD brain like crazy. It's like
Yeah.
spinning
I
plates,
bet.
getting them all spinning
Yeah.
and keeping them moving. But the
Yeah.
fact is that I think the most dangerous position in 2026 to be in, and especially as we head into 2027 soon, is to only have one single source of revenue or income in your life. The
Yeah.
full-time job is the
Yeah.
most dangerous thing I think that we've got in our whole system, because as we're starting to see, how many people have just been fired from KPMG in the last 24 hours? How many people got dropped from West Farmers? How many people are dropped from Woolworths? All their jobs are being outsourced and overseas, providers. And there's some indications that some of that might be AI, but to be honest, AI has created like way more jobs than it's taken away right now.
Yeah.
The full-time job, or the single source of revenue, or the I'm putting everything into this one cafe model of life, it is just bound to fail. It's way too risky. And that's why I'm not afraid of failure, because I've got 17 moving parts. If one of them fails, it's 1 out of 17. I can fill that gap.
A very abundant lifestyle, not lifestyle, view of the world. I used to be in sales actually, and one of the ways that I downloaded this PDF, in the old days where you'd have to put in your email address and then get a
Yeah.
PDF, and then,
Yeah.
and I got this
Yep.
PDF from this really cheesy sales thing, and it actually turned out to be absolutely brilliant. I still go back to it now, and it was called 18 Email Sellers That Work. And basically it was about how to handle any situation in sales via email. But the genius of it was actually the setup. He had 2 pages where he talked about his philosophy, how he got to these emails. And one of them was abundance. He said, if you feel nervous about a lead, about the decision of the lead to go ahead or not go ahead, there's something wrong. You're not talking to enough people. Because if you're talking to enough people, then he has no power over you, or she has no power over you. And I was like, this guy is, and I used to mentor people had a little business mentoring people, and who generally business owners who didn't know how to sell. And that was my number one lesson is go, oh, I'm really worried about the sale. I'm really worried about the sale. And I just say to them, you're not talking to enough people. That's the answer.
Yeah.
The answer isn't what do I do next on the sale? That is probably, again, coming back to agency. You have way less power than you actually think. The guy's either going to go ahead or they're not going to go ahead. But if you say the right things in the right order, it's not going to change the result. It's just that it's there. So if you can talk to more people, then you're golden, right? That's how you do it. And then also your behavior changes and you're more likely to get sales because you're not relaxed, but you're confident. If you're perceived as confident anyway.
And like most salespeople, you learn that art of listening to be able to go, well, if I'm relaxed and I'm confident, I can hear more of what they're saying. I'm taking in more
Yeah.
information. I'm able to break down more of those objections. I'm able to respond more empathetically because I'm not there with cortisol running through my body, stressed out to the max, knowing that if I don't get this one $10,000 deal, I'm absolutely screwed. That's the
Yeah.
thing. That's been my 2027, Dave. My 2026, sorry, has been all about. I put a whole lot of effort into landing one big contract this year.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I had to put in lots of little micro efforts to make sure that if I don't
Nice.
get that one contract, that all these other things can come in. The problem I've got now, Dave, is that they've all come in. And so I've got the big
Nice.
one plus
Nice.
all the little
Good
ones,
problem.
which means I've suddenly had to open up offices and staff all over the place to be able to fill that gap.
Damn, that's a great position to be in. I also think that if you have spread your bets like that, it is a weird thing. You don't stress so much about dips and things like that because you kind of like there's stuff on the way. There is stuff on the way. The worst thing you can do is, like you said, you go all in, and then all of a sudden there's nothing there. I see it a lot in professional services businesses where they have this feast and famine thing. They get super busy. They love their work. They're doing the work. And then they come out the other side of this big project and they have got no work, they've got no pipeline. And then the couple of months where they've got no work, that just eats all the profit that they made in the previous work. It's a really rough way to run life, I reckon.
Yeah, this is a very big difference between, I guess, marketing as a tactic and marketing as a strategy, because marketing obviously is what brings in that pipeline of new work.
Yeah.
What we tend to do is go, I need to achieve this thing, so quickly go do that, advertise, market, network, do all the things. I've landed it. Oh, great, I can chill, I can kick back now and
Yeah.
just enjoy the
Yeah.
spoils. But that's only the beginning of the work. And this is where I guess campaign thinking and systems thinking comes into it. Then instead of thinking of, I need to achieve this one goal, you go, actually, I need to achieve this goal. And then there's going to be a new goal and there's going to be a new goal. So what am I doing that almost like a waterfall project management Gantt chart where you're saying this ends, this begins, this ends, this begins. And I've got kind of the same thing in an Excel spreadsheet here, which is literally my promotions that guarantees that I never take my foot off the accelerator when it comes to promotions, content, personal brand, all those things just keep coming, keep coming, keep coming, because at any one point, this contract could be taken off me. This client could drop off. This client could drop off. I've always got to plan for the next thing, which has the opposite. That also has the side effect of, even if none of them drop off, I've then got new ones coming in. So you're then going into sort of perpetual growth.
Yeah. I like what you said, but when you said it's obvious that marketing is all about is what you need to do to grow, because actually what I find so interesting is very few people actually believe that. It's the last thing that they do. And it's like the thing about marketing when it's done well is it's working 24/7. You can only ring so many people. But yeah, I've given up now. I don't try and convince people. If people don't believe in marketing, then it's like the weather. It's there if you believe in it or not. It's happening.
I blame the fluffification of marketing, really. I think it's where we've fluffified marketing into, people laughing at their lattes, using selfies of them with a MacBook Pro in a cafe, going, ha, 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 and showing that, look at my marketing lifestyle. We've fluffified it. But marketing's a science. Marketing's a set of processes. Doesn't have guaranteed outcomes, and that's the faith part of it. It's faith and science, it's alchemy, it's a little bit of, but it has very defined things you can do that have very defined ranges of outcomes you want to get. And we approach it like it's a creative activity, or it's a fun activity, or it's the only activity you ever need to do for your business. And then we forget about the actual operation of the business, which I'm terrible at. I'm terrible at operating my business. So I've got accountants and lawyers and staff for all that, but very good at marketing.
You got to be. And I think when I started Euro, I had this sort of dream job and it disintegrated on me. And I ended up just having to start Europa up, which had always been a side hustle, go full time out of necessity, because I suddenly, to really give you credence to what you said earlier, I suddenly found myself on the job market and I was too old for mid-tier roles and there weren't that many senior roles around and no
Yeah.
one lets you go take a back step. It's just not, they're like, you're a flight risk, right? So I had really had to go full time with Europa. It was my only play. And I realized I was going to have to drink my own Kool-Aid and go big on LinkedIn, which I really didn't, initially at least, I really didn't enjoy doing that. And I felt like total cringe. But like my nephew says, you got to be cringe before they binge. And I just did it. And the other thing is, people aren't really thinking about you at all. They're thinking about themselves. So they're not, if you put a post out that's a little bit janky and doesn't quite make it, then who cares? It's all good. But how did you figure out the LinkedIn thing? Because that is something, that's how we met. Obviously, you're
Yeah.
very good at that and you're very consistent with that. What was that, sort of trial and error, or was that just like what sort of keyed you onto it?
I was in social media really, really early. So I got into it
Yeah,
pretty much as like, there was a thing called 6 Degrees, which is I probably credited as the very first social network. And it was just
yeah,
basically, the idea was to connect people through the 6 degrees of connection that everyone's
yeah,
connected through. They could
yeah,
have called it Kevin Bacon because apparently everyone in Hollywood's related to Kevin Bacon for the same kind of
uh,
reason. Connectivity
yeah,
between people. It was an early
yeah,
predecessor to what is now LinkedIn. So it was long before the Facebooks, the MySpaces, the Friendsters, the friend feeds, all those kind of things. Classmates.com was a really early social network as well. I was in all of those really early because I just I thought it was cool. I thought the idea of being able to connect with people who you either went to school with many years later was cool because I'd long left, where I grew up. I wasn't connected to anyone through there. I changed high schools, went to a university that wasn't near where I went to school, all the things, and moved into state, many things. So social media for me was always a social network rather than a media. It's become a media
yeah,
now. That's another story for another episode. But it's very much, I was
yeah,
very early into it. So when I saw the opportunity pop up, really the LinkedIn thing sort of about 2014 really sort of to start to take off. That's when they were, allowing people to write articles, for example, and articles could
mm,
go viral. And my very first article, immediately had 32,000 people read it in 2014. I went, okay, that's interesting. Then I kind of slipped off. LinkedIn just became, it wasn't very cool. Facebook was cooler. Instagram was cooler. YouTube was cooler. LinkedIn just didn't seem to be the thing until I recognized that what I was trying to do, I was trying to work with businesses. And
yeah,
it kind of got in my head that businesses aren't doing business on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. YouTube maybe a little bit, but they are on LinkedIn. And so to get on LinkedIn meant in about 2018, when I sort of began slowly sort of putting myself in there, really not taking it seriously until 2022, then realizing that going, well, in order to do this, I've got to do what I have not done on Facebook. I've never positioned myself on Facebook as a business owner. I've never positioned myself on Facebook as an expert. I've been funny. I've been humorous. I've been posting travel and selfies and cafe lattes and all that stuff, but I hadn't ever been a business on social media. And so I guess it was, it's actually January 1, 2022 was when I made a decision to say, I'm going in on LinkedIn now.
yeah,
And that was just me realizing that I'm talking to people who are business owners or business operators. It's different to Facebook. What would you do? And then I'll just look at what others were doing really well. You go, okay, well, maybe replicate a bit of that. But it came down to, and you mentioned the word cringe before, I had
yeah,
to climb that cringe mountain. I had
yeah.
to
Climb
realize
Cringe
that,
Mountain. Yeah,
yeah, I was going to be seen in my local area, which is where most of your initial connections are going to come from in your local city. I was going to be looked upon as an absolute joke by business owners, more established consultants, more established people who are going to laugh and look down their nose at me. They're going to laugh at their lattes as I walk by, and they're going to do all that stuff. And then they did, and they still do.
yeah,
That's never stopped. What has stopped is me giving a damn about what they think, because number one, they're all managers, they're all
yeah,
general managers, CEOs, then they're employees. I'm not.
Mm.
I'm no one's
Mm.
employee. So it's
Mm.
already I go, well, why would I care what a manager or a CEO thinks of me when I'm probably never going to work with them anyway? In fact, they're never going to work with anybody other than their network they've already got. So they're not my people. What I'm looking for is the people who are not satisfied with the status quo. They're not satisfied with that network. They know that their network is not allowing them to grow. They need someone new, something new, some new way of thinking. So I'll continue doing what I do, but based upon a very strategic mix of a couple of topics that I talk about, which are usually digital skills and entrepreneurship, because that's what I work in mostly. And I've got a lot of expertise in that area. So you can't just go, oh, I'm going to pick, raffia hat making, and you've never made a raffia hat in your life. It's got to be something you've got some credibility and some background for. And then going, well, what are the things that make me me? What are the values I have? So it's like 2 topics, 3 values. So the 3 values I've chosen, I caught these off a Brene Brown list. You look for
Yeah.
Brene Brown values, there's a whole PDF
Yeah.
of about 100 different values. The ones I picked out were honesty, which was a combination of vulnerability and authenticity, because I hate the word authentic. So I went honesty,
Yeah.
honesty.
Yeah.
Honesty,
Honesty's good.
effectiveness. Yeah, effectiveness, because if you're not effective, you're wasting your time and wasting everyone else's time. The third one being approachable. And how I knew they were my values was that I asked myself, if someone's came to me and said, you're not effective, how would I feel? I feel like I was gut punched. If someone said to
Yeah.
me, I was wanting to walk up to you at that event, but I didn't know how to approach you, that would feel like a gut punch, because it's so important to me to feel like people can approach me. And with the honesty, if someone to say, I think you're all fake, that would be a gut punch to me as well, because I'm like, far out. I've put so much effort into the idea of sharing the authentic, real, raw failure of my life, that how could you think that I would fake that stuff? Like, it's just, why would someone fake that? Because it's just
Yeah. No. Totally.
counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then
It's interesting.
going, asking 5 questions. And I stole these from a writer, Justin Welsh, who's very well known on LinkedIn's platform.
Justin. Yeah.
Yeah, and his 5 questions are, what can I teach today? The second one being, what have I noticed in my area of expertise? Then the third one could be, it's a contrarian. So it's like, how do I think differently about this topic than other people do? The fourth one being, how can I deliver this information as a list of tips or tricks or some kind of easy way of consuming it? And the fifth one being, what happened in my life in this topic area, and what did I learn from it? And so those 5
Yeah.
questions, plus the 3 values, plus the 2 topics, forms this never-ending bucket of content that you can just keep going back into, because all you're doing is basically drawing stories from your own calendar and then inserting it through that kind of framework.
But the thing is that you've got the life to pull from, right? That's the thing. If you've got all these things going on, it's a lot easier. But it's certainly a lot easier than staring at a cursor, basically blinking.
Yeah, but even
And
someone who sits at a desk for 7.6
yeah,
hours a day, finishes at 4:21 p.m. Shout out to all my Northern Territory government
yeah,
workers who finish
yeah,
at
yeah,
exactly 4:21 p.m. They still
yeah,
have so much that happens in their day. They just don't see it as significant, but they don't realize that my life, to me, is
yeah,
kind of boring and dull because I live it.
yeah,
But to anyone else,
yes,
they look at it and go, your antics in your hotel rooms that you tell me about, like all the challenges you have in your cheap motel rooms, that is
yeah,
hilarious. And like, oh, really?
yeah.
Because that to me is just how I live, but they find it fascinating. And everyone's got that in their life in some way.
Oh, totally. I always like it. One of the things that I have learned is important is if you're in a kind of business meeting, I've learned not to really value the part at the beginning of the meeting where you just do small talk. People
Mm,
really knock small talk. But what you're actually doing is you're getting to kind of know someone on a different level than just a transaction.
mm.
And it's often then if you can ask a key question about, oh, I see you've got a dog T-shirt. What have you got? You're clearly a dog owner. What kind of dog have you got? And kind of off they go. It's that kind of intimacy I think people overlook as being important, but it's actually the way of you're building an insurance policy that I'm not going to screw
It's
you over for a
chemistry.
start. Yeah,
It's
there's
pure
chemistry. Yeah,
chemistry. We need that
yeah,
oxytocin to flow between us so that we can actually
yeah,
have that empathy to be able to have enough interest in each other. And then we get to that
yeah,
old marketing thing, right? You got to
yeah,
kind of know someone in order to like them, and you got to like them before you can trust them. So if you want someone to
yeah,
trust you in, say, a networking event, they're not going to do that until they actually know a little bit about you. which is through small
Yep.
talk, and they come to
Yep.
like you, which generally happens through the small talk as well, before they'll finally
Yeah.
feel that trusting you. And that's that phenomenon, or that effect of mere exposure, the mere exposure effect, which is all about the
Yeah.
fact that just because I run into that guy so many times at a networking event, and I kind of like him, I automatically trust him than anyone else in that space who may have 20 years more experience. I like him, or I like her, not them,
Yeah.
just that one.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. And I think the other thing that people forget is that, or don't know, is that with the LinkedIn stuff and the other networking, all these other things, I basically got three things that I do. I do this podcast, I do a newsletter, I do LinkedIn, and then I do real life networking. It just falls out of the sky. It's like random stuff. You just would not. And I had someone book a meeting in my diary the other day because I've got it on my website, and they just booked some time in my diary. And I emailed them, said, do I know you? And they're like, no. No, I just really, I
Yeah.
just want to catch up. If that's weird, if that's in any way weird, I say, no, totally. This is kind of weird. I'm here for. And
That's my newsletter,
yeah,
Dave. That's the newsletter. And you'll
yeah,
notice it's saying your newsletter is fairly new, and I know it's still
yeah,
gathering its pigments. But what happens with over time is just, again, the mere exposure effect. Just because someone sees, they don't even have to have read the newsletter. They
no,
just see it come into their inbox, and they see that name, Dave Hayward, and they just go, I know that name. So when I think about
yeah,
the thing I need doing, I happen to know what Dave does from the one email I read and that one LinkedIn post I may have seen. And then they go, oh, I'll just go to him because that's easy. He's already in my
yeah,
mailbox.
exactly. It's the parasocial relationship that you start developing with someone, and you don't even know it's happening. And I so rate newsletters. I always have for clients. Clients always like kind of, oh no, come on, we don't do newsletters. It's very ineffective. And it's like, you're losing an opportunity to actually talk to your customers about stuff that you do. And another thing that it's really good for is one of the biggest things I work with people who do sell a lot of products is that they're constantly saying, I can't believe it customer, he's gone and bought a product that we sell from someone else and he didn't know that we sold it. And it's like, how would he know? He only knows you for that, for the thing that you do, not all the other things that you do. So you've kind of you've missed your calling to cross sell
Yeah,
essentially.
exactly. If you're the kind of person who shows up on LinkedIn and all you do is tell jokes and show photos of your cat, well, then probably
Yeah.
going to have a problem when someone just goes to consider the thing that you do. They have no idea you're doing it because all they know of you
Yeah.
is as that funny person that gets lots of engagement but gets no business. You know,
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah.
getting attention is one side of the LinkedIn economy. You've actually then got to do something with that attention, and that's where so many get stuck. They get very caught up on those metrics of, oh, look at the views, look at the dopamine I'm getting, but nothing coming from it. And that newsletters cut through that because you have to be on topic. You have to be yourself because over a series, I'm now up to 4.5 years into my newsletter,
Yeah.
just
I
about to
know.
hit 17 and a
So
half
good.
thousand people. And it's just,
Congrats, man. That's
I
awesome.
can't get away with ever not being on topic because they will call me out and drop off and unsubscribe en masse if I'm not me. So I have
Yeah.
to do what I do, which is small talk. The first half of my newsletter is basically small talk about the ridiculous crap that I put myself through, the failures I do, the stupid hotel rooms, but there's always a lesson attached to it. And then down the bottom, here's what I've got coming up: my webinars, my consultations, my this, my that. That's all coming up. But you have to keep that going, and it always has the link back to some kind of business outcome. I can tell all the funny stories I want, but I need to link it back to some kind of business outcome without being that link to cringiness where it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
hey, this is what I learned about B2B marketing by asking my partner to marry me. You know, you get
Yeah.
that kind
Yeah.
of
That's right.
real, like deserved cringe.
Yeah, that's right. There are a couple of, I could talk to you all day, but there are a couple of things I want to get to, which is the first is that I read somewhere that you did 400 podcasts and then stopped. And obviously I'm interested in that because this is episode 23, I think, something like that for the slideshow. So yeah, tell us about the podcast and why you stopped.
First of all, it had about 5,000 listeners, so it was great.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
at its peak. I was doing it pretty much 5 days a week, Monday to
Oh my
Friday.
God.
It was a 5 minute roundup every morning. The idea was you could listen to it on a commute, like
Yeah.
breakfast radio, pretty much the same kind of thing. But what I was finding is that I was doing things, I was generating scripts, I was doing stuff that I just went, This is adding no value to anyone. Now, 5,000 people may have thought differently. They might have thought there was some value in that. It could have been entertaining the way I did it. It could have been informative in a way that I just couldn't see. But what I could see was that I was doing this activity, and over 400 episodes saw absolutely no business return that I could track at all. No one ever who came to me ever mentioned that they heard me in a podcast. Also, the analytics of the podcast were everyone was offshore. They're all overseas. They're all in the Philippines and in India and in the US and the UK. And I wasn't working with any of these people in the stuff I do. So I'm like, well, if this is a fun thing to do, which it wasn't, it was actually really resource intensive. If this is giving me a result in my business, which it wasn't, then I might keep it. But it wasn't doing any of those things. So I just had to make that hard decision and go slice it off. May revisit it another day on another way. But really, I guess that I would not do a podcast now for me. I think podcasts are very good. The way you're doing it, like that, very slow burn. It's doing a very specific thing. You're not overdoing it. Like everything I do, I overdo. So I go, I'm not going to do it once a month. I'm going to do it once a day. And then, like I have to go too far. And I'm seeing this thing, Gary Vee's all about get on LinkedIn and post, between 8 and 15 times a day. And my good friend Kate Merriweather is going, she tried it for like 2 days and went, I can't do this. This is not me. And I'm like, why would you even do that? Like, he's not doing the posts. They're not him.
No,
that's his team. He's got this massive team. Thing works, and it works for him, for the business he's got, the teams he's got, and all that stuff. It suits what he does. That's not you. That's not me. If you're a sole trader, you're on your own. You're a one-person business. Gary Vee is not a one-person business. Even I'm not a one-person business anymore. And that's just not sustainable, and it makes no sense. But I still produce a lot of content, just not 60 to 300 pieces of content a day.
Yeah, no, totally. And who's got time to watch all that stuff anyway? The other one I wanted to talk to you about is tech, because obviously that's a big thing that you and I have in common. And I'm interested where you're at now with AI. What's the sort of thing that you're most excited about? And also tell me something that you're a bit doomer on.
Gosh, it changes every month because, mid last year, everything was Gemini, Google Gemini. Gemini was amazing. It was doing things the others couldn't get near. Claude was crap. Now Claude is amazing, but it's now a bit on the nose because they're going to be doing this, digital fingerprinting in their text output kind of thing. And so ChatGPT is now the cool thing to do again. I guess I just remove myself from platforms and just go platform agnostic. I work with the platform that works the best for me. At the moment, that happens to be Claude, but I'm also doing a lot in ChatGPT.
Yeah.
What I find for me is not using AI as something to speed me up. It's using AI as something to make me more accurate and have better quality. And that's not the fast thing. It's actually, in some cases, it's now slower for me to get output because I want better output. And that's what it's allowed me to do. So for me, AI is like the smart screwdriver, right? You could buy IKEA flat pack furniture, take it home, and with your fingers try and screw in all those things with your fingers, and you get there in 50 days and you'd have a bedside table. Or you could use a screwdriver and you can get there in an hour. Or you could use a powered screwdriver and get there in 5 minutes. And that's all AI is for me. It's something that does get me there faster. But now that I'm getting there faster, I want better quality. So I'm going back through and saying, how can I take my rambling thoughts, my stupid life, throw that into something and help it make sense of it so I don't come across as this bizarre, bleating sheep of a person who's just screaming at a screen, and I come across with some kind of empathy for the reader, because my rambling has no empathy for the reader because it's just blah, blah, blah. It's like a fire hose. What has empathy for the reader is taking that and structuring it in a way that's easy for someone to consume, and more importantly, easy for them to take something away for themselves from. That's what AI is. It's not faster, faster, faster. It's better.
I think the other thing is that I like what you said about being platform agnostic, because like a lot of people, I jumped on the Claude bandwagon. I was very Claude pilled for a while. And then Fable came out, and Fable just seems to have made Claude seems to have verbal diarrhea all of a sudden. It's got like and it's overcomplicates things. It talks in a language. I have to constantly write back to it. And I'm thinking, I'm actually read at a relatively high level. I can't understand what you're trying to say to me. What is this?
Yeah.
And too many propositions in one paragraph and often contradictory.
Yeah.
It's really strange. I don't know what's caused it, but I think it, who knows? It's
Fable's
got
got
a
a
lot to
writing
do.
tool, and that's the
Yeah.
understanding. Fable's not for
Yeah.
you and I. Fable is not for
Yeah.
you and I to write our blogs with. That's not what
It's
it's made
coding.
for. It is
Yeah.
coding. It is a phenomenal coder, but Claude stopped being a good writing tool at Opus
Yeah.
4.6. So I've
Yeah,
actually
it
turned
did.
all
Yeah.
my writing back at 4.6. So I'm using
Yeah.
Opus 4.6. Still gives me just that beautiful, that quality that I'm looking for, that voice, the ability to take my voice. Anything after 4.6 just degraded. And Fable and Opus 5 are just
Yeah.
useless when it comes to writing, but they're not made for writing. They're made for complex multi-step operations.
Yeah, that would make perfect sense. That's why you've got this kind of there. It's almost like someone who's got ruminating thoughts, right? They're just kind of
Yeah.
like, oh, and they're thinking like several steps ahead. Tell me about something that because what I find interesting about the AI hypers and like I mentioned earlier, that I've my friend Ed Ortega, who is one of the great technology educators,
Mm.
one of the things I really admire about him is his intellectual honesty. And what do you got a little bit doomer on? What do you think? What do you think is the kind of the downside to the tech, or something that you're seeing that maybe people think is great and isn't so good?
It's going to expose the specialists for what they are, which is
Yeah,
largely people who are so deeply entrenched in one thing that they cannot easily move on to another thing. We are already seeing the AI apocalypse when it comes to the sweatshops in India and the Philippines, where
yeah,
virtual
yeah.
assistants and outsourced tech people are just losing jobs so quickly. Because
Mm,
everything that I needed a VA from the Philippines to do 2 years ago, I can do myself now, and it's
yeah,
cheaper and it's faster and it's better quality, and I don't have to have a meeting with it every week to check on its work. I don't have to chase it because it went away for 3 days because it couldn't get a cafe to work from because the Wi-Fi has been out in their village. I don't have any of that problem. So that's the downside, is that, like all new technologies, it disproportionately affects those who are most vulnerable. And it's
yeah,
not going to be you and I sitting in our lovely plush lifestyles and the luxury hotels that I seem to never stay in, like
yeah.
my budget hotels, and traveling. I'm flying a business class flight on Sunday morning, mate.
Nice.
I look at that and go crazy, like that I'm doing that. But that's not the people it affects. It's not affecting you and I. It's affecting those who do this one thing over and over and over and over again. And that's all they do. They run a calendar. Sorry, AI does better than you. They write copywriting for other people's LinkedIn posts. Well, all the tools can do that better than most people now. So
Yeah,
it's going to disproportionately affect those people who have this one skill and one skill alone, and they've been able to monetize that skill, and they've never upgraded their skills. They've never expanded their skills. And so it comes down to, you and I, entrepreneurs, right? We've got the
yeah,
entrepreneurial attitude. We just go, we follow the money, we follow the
yeah,
opportunity. What they're
yeah,
doing is following predictability, following stability, following that the fact that they know that tomorrow they're going to do the same thing they did today. You and I, we live for our work. We love our work. They
yeah.
live
I
for
do.
everything outside of their work. And that's unfortunately the people who will be disproportionately affected the most by the removal of repetitive tasks from people.
But I think ultimately that's what technology is supposed to do, isn't it? It's not,
Buggy whip
we didn't,
makers, horse
yeah, we,
trainers, the people who used to scoop up the horse poo from the streets. Cars came
yeah,
around. The difference is, though, mate, that took 50 years to come through, the changing over from the
yeah.
horse and cart to the automobile. This is happening in a matter of 5 years. And that's
Oh,
that's
yeah.
that's the big problem, is how fast it is.
It's a bit like in China, we see it with how they have no suburbs, right? Because
Mm,
they have the shift from rural to city was over 10 years. It
too
is
quick.
like, if you, I haven't got the numbers
Yeah.
in my head, but they went from being where having children was advantageous to having children was
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
disadvantage, like
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
the demographic, we're still starting to, that's all playing out now, right?
Yeah. Happening in
And
India as well. Same thing.
yeah, yeah. It's the other thing is it's a really good time to be a generalist and a really good time to be what they used to call, I don't know if you've read it, what's it called? Better by Design or whatever it was called, the Tim
Mm,
Brown book. And he
yeah.
talked about the T-shaped individual
Yeah.
and that kind of now the T-shape was that the down bit was a deep domain specialization with the ability to go wide. Now you can go down on the wide bits as well because you've
Yeah.
got this tool with a PhD in your pocket, basically.
Yeah. Well, the T
And
became an M, you know?
yeah, and so the last thing I want to talk to you about is you do all these workshops up in technology workshops, and you're working out of an innovation hub. What's that all about?
Well, I've always had this thing where I like to associate myself with others who do good things. That's part of networking. I like to,
Yeah,
like, I'm walking alongside LinkedIn as a top voice. I get asked by
yeah,
LinkedIn all the time into their Sydney mothership to go and have a chat to them about, what's happening, my thoughts on things. So I'm very closely associated with LinkedIn through that now. With Meta, I'm still contracting to Meta as a lead trainer. So I was actually meant to be in Auckland last week, but I couldn't be because I was booked into Perth, so for Meta
yeah,
to do workshops there. So I come alongside other organizations. What thankfully has happened is because I do that, they come to me and get me to come alongside them. And then that's
yes,
the same thing with the Darwin Innovation Hub, is that I've come alongside the Darwin Innovation Hub, contracting to them to run what they call their innovation calendar. So it's mentoring those who have innovative ideas that they want to try out. They may never get any investment for it. They may never get any growth out of it. But what it does, when you increase the entrepreneurial capacity of any population, you increase opportunity for everybody. And that's part of their social license, I guess, with the Northern Territory, is to provide that outcome. So I get to do the thing I love doing, which is teaching digital skills. I get paid to do that. And I get to have lots and lots of coffees with people where I just go around Darwin and have coffee with people constantly, talking about their innovative ideas, encouraging them to come alongside. And, hey, I can work with you at no cost for the next 6 months to help you to sort of refine that idea and build it up. And, oh, here's a government grant over here that I can connect you with. And here's another specialist over here I can connect you with. It sharpens my skills as a networker, but also for them, it provides somebody who now has, while I'm still laughed at as a joke by several people who I'm sure are, very big members of the local Chamber of Commerce, I'm not as much of a joke as I was 4 years ago. I'm now a
yeah,
player. I'm now
yeah,
invited to those tables. I'm now someone who's moving in those circles. So I can then bring others in. And that's the whole key. When you go through a door, hold it open and bring a few people through with you. And that's why I like to associate myself with people like the Darwin Innovation Hub, Meta, LinkedIn, and the various other things like the Australian government's Digital Solutions Program and their subcontractor who's called Busy Business, who I'm doing a lot of stuff with at the moment.
yeah. It's interesting. In New Zealand, we're having what's called, I don't know if it's a thing in Aussie, but we're having what's called a productivity crisis where our
Mm,
productivity has stagnated. And we've actually got a thing where Kiwis are leaving in record numbers to Australia, primarily Sydney. And the issue with productivity is such a nebulous concept, but people, no one can really understand it,
that's
what it
right.
means. But
Yeah.
it's kind of, yeah, what do you mean by that? I don't really know. It's a bit like, yeah, anyway, I have to just think of a very inappropriate joke, but I'll leave that. And I'll just leave that aside. We'll put that aside. I think that idea of lifting through like innovation, because if you're at the
Mm,
bottom of the world, you have to be innovative. And the other thing is, I think I've always thought that we don't take tech seriously enough down here, because if you really want to get ahead, that coming up with weightless exporting, something you can export weightlessly, that's the gold standard. Because I think New Zealand, I read somewhere that we produce about 40 million, we produce 40 million people's worth of food.
yeah.
So that is not a lot. Once you've done that, you sold that food, then that's it. Then what do you do next? There's only so many
That's it.
cows and so much sheep and
That's it.
all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Same problem here. We just dig things out of the ground and send them off to other people to add the value to. And once you
Right.
get to a point where you've sold all the stuff in the ground, what do you do next? What's the next thing you're doing? And so that's a
Yeah.
constant problem with our first world economies that is specialized to a point where they just tend to do this one thing.
Yeah, it's like the people, it's an analog for what's happening in general. So I think if there's
Exactly.
one thing we take away from this talk is spread your risk and spread your wings. Yeah. So Dante, I could talk to you all day, but I'm not sure that a video platform could cope with it. I just got to finish by asking you, hopefully you'll come back at some point.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Look, I'll have a string of other failures to talk about by then, I'm sure.
oh, totally. And also some successes, no doubt. And the thing
Oh,
is
yeah.
are you coming down to NZ anytime soon?
Yeah, I'm planning actually coming next year. So I'm thinking around winter next year. I really want to get to the South Island because I've never been there. I've been
Yeah,
to Auckland twice. I
yeah.
think I've done Northland and Auckland and Rotorua and all those areas. I want to get out a bit more and see a bit more. So I'm gonna, bundle up the partner in a Maui van and head south.
Oh, do that. It's amazing, amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on Slideshow, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Dave.